Welcome back to the Ken Matthews Report, another special edition interview. My pleasure to have Brilyn Hollyhand on. Brilyn is a journalist, analyst, and currently the chairman of the Youth Advisory Council, the Republican National Committee, and most importantly, author. You have a book out now. Let me tell you honestly, I have not read it yet. It hasn't arrived yet. That's through no fault of yours. I read about one book a week. I review books all the time. I want to read yours. I certainly will plug it now. One Generation Away, Why Now is the Time to Restore American Freedom. And for people that don't know, Brilyn started down this road as the Tuscaloosa kid, starting a vlog. Was it a vlog or a website?
A little mix of both. Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, welcome to the show. I mean, I think your big mission right now is getting young people exposed to the attributes of the Republican Party and the great things that come from conservatism. And apparently you're doing a great job. So welcome again to the show.
Thank you, Ken. I really appreciate it. This is awesome. This is such an honor. I've listened to you for years, filling in for Rush. And so when your name popped up in my inbox, I was like, we've got to make time. We've got to make this work. This is my one day home in the past 3 weeks. And then I leave tomorrow for Milwaukee for the convention.
Oh, my goodness.
There was nobody else I would make time for other than Ken Matthews. And I just couldn't be more excited to do this.
Thank you. Well, I was just, and for people tuning in, I was just telling Brilyn that this is the first time, and my viewers know this, this is the first time I've worn a coat and tie in almost 2 years. And the only reason I did this, because every time I see you, you carry yourself. Well, first of all, you're 18, right?
Yes, sir. Just turned 18 2 weeks ago.
Just turned 18. So I have so many questions for you. Like, how is your brain so developed at this point? We're going to talk about that. I want to talk about your parents. I want to dig deep into your personal life, just deep, really dark, deep into your personal life. But I even told my wife, I said, I'm having this young man on tomorrow, and he's sharp as a tack. I just saw him analyze Joe Biden's debate performance, and he was on Fox.
Yes, sir.
And he just turned 18. And I'm like, what is this all about? So I said, I better wear a tie. And then the one time I wear a tie in 2 years, you're dressed like Lindsey Graham.
I am. I thought this is the first day I haven't been in a suit and tie in 3 weeks. And I was like, I can get away with it today. I'll be okay. And of course,
I'm going on Ken's show.
Yeah, I was like, it'll be fine, but it wasn't fine.
Ken's wacky. Ken. He's got the Trumpinator, and he's a smart ass. Well, if it makes you feel any better, I'm wearing shorts. So
I am too. So that's okay. We're good.
So
again,
go
with my outfits.
this is when I see people like yourself on the campaign trail. I've been to a few Trump rallies and stuff, and the thing that always surprises me, especially about the Trump dynamic, is how many young people are into it. And just to rewind, so you're 11 years old, and I read an interview with your parents, and they said they did not push you into this. So they weren't like dance moms or soccer moms. How do you get in Tuscaloosa, Alabama at 11 years old? How do you decide I'm going to start interviewing senators? What's that all about?
Yeah, so I first started paying attention to politics. It was the third grade, and the 2016 presidential election was happening. And I was like, this is fascinating. This is so interesting. That this is the dynamic of the country. I'd never really been exposed to politics, never really seen a lot of news. I was fortunate enough, and we'll talk about this more, but fortunate enough to grow up in a Christian conservative household. Those were the morals and values I was raised around. But politics wasn't pushed on me at all. My mom's in education. She was a teacher my whole life. My dad's in construction. There was no, political influence at all. It's not like they're the fundraising parent that, drag me to every political event or anything like that. This was a surprise to my whole family and community, and I kind of drug them along with me. So I first got interested in third grade. Fourth grade, made my class stay in and watch Trump's inauguration. We stayed in from recess so we could watch it together. And
now, how did you do that? Was that against their will? Was this were police called, or was it
police were not called?
Okay.
I was just like, guys, this is history. Like, you're gonna want to see this. You know, the speeches might be a little boring. Sometimes they have some singers, a poem might be read. There'll be something interesting for you to watch. But I promise you'll have a good time. And trust me, you're gonna want to say years from now that you watched this. You're gonna want to tell your kids and
Yeah.
grandkids you saw Trump's inauguration. And of course, at the time, everybody was like, this guy's a wacko. What is he talking about? And now they were all so supportive and have kind of come along. And just this past weekend, this is another story we can get into later, but my publishing company really wanted me to do a big launch party for the book. And
Mhm.
they wanted us to go up to New York and do this big launch party and invite all their friends. And I was like, no, 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 like I need to do it here in my hometown. My hometown has supported me since I was 11. They helped me, you know, become who I am. They helped me put this book together. We're going to do it here. We're going to celebrate with them. We had 550 plus people pack a room here to celebrate me. It was friends, family, church, school. It was everybody. And it was so cool. So that shows you just from age 11 to 18, these 7 years, my community
Beautiful.
has been my support system.
See that he just turned 18. He has a publisher. He has a publisher. I don't even have a sound guy anymore, but he has a publisher. It's interesting because so you, as you gravitated toward politics, you gained friends, and I've lost most of mine. So this
I've
is
lost
really
some along the way too. I've
this is
definitely lost
a
some.
really cool dynamic. I knew there was Christianity and conservatism in your background.
Yeah.
Um, and I anybody who follows his show knows that we talk about young people a lot,
Yeah.
sometimes in a very positive way, and sometimes it's kind of like, wow. When I first saw you on Fox, I was just shocked that uh, you were not showing any parts of your anatomy that shouldn't be shown, which is standard fare. Like you go to the mall, kids are wearing pajama bottoms, they're showing a butt crack, they're wearing
Yep.
slippers.
Yep.
This is what your age group is doing. And then, as you know, the human brain doesn't fully develop until you're 25 years old. It's usually 24 to 26 for a female, and sometimes it's over 40 for men. If you've probably met people in Congress, and well, look
Oh
at
yes.
Biden's brain. Um, so I just thought to myself, you seem to be very well read and very well spoken. And I think the pairing of you with other young people is such a great trajectory for what you're doing with your knowledge. So tell us about your relationship with President Trump and how that's going.
Yeah. So I first met President Trump. I first interacted with him and his team while he was in the White House. It was towards the end. It was 2019, 2020, right
Okay.
before COVID, right after COVID. They started kind of paying attention to what I was doing.
So you were
Um,
8.
yeah, I think it was like 12 or 13.
Oh, that's yeah,
And
that's
getting, yeah,
yeah,
totally different.
you could
Totally
have
different.
you could have
You have like
totally
playground cred at that point, so you're all
yeah,
good. You can get it.
yeah,
You
and
can
you could
get
have
Secret Service cred. Yeah.
you could have certainly beat Kamala in a
Yeah.
debate at 13.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Anyway,
Anyway,
I'm
so
sorry
they
I interrupted.
no,
I'm
no,
sorry.
no, you're fine. No, you're good. They started kind of paying attention to some of the things I was doing, some of the speeches I was giving then. It was like this kid, you know, this is something. And so that's around the time I started a podcast, and they invited me up to interview Stephanie Grisham. I did Sarah Sanders, Sean Spicer, all the press secretaries under Trump, and then after COVID, got to go up and interview Kelly McEnany. And so all four press secretaries got to sit down with in the West Wing, got to have conversations with them. It was a really, really cool experience.
Mm,
Kind of being a part of that, being kind of in that press shop. Literally, I mean, if you know the layout of the West Wing, the press office is right across, you know, down the hall from where the Oval is. And so it was just really cool kind of getting to see all of that firsthand.
I
So that's where
bet.
it started. It was right. I didn't meet President Trump during his time in office. It was right when he got out. So that actually, this is such a funny story now that Watley and I laugh about all the time. But I got invited to North Carolina to go do an event. It was the North Carolina Republican Party's winter dinner, summer dinner, something, and
Hmm.
got to go up and do an event. President Trump was the headliner. Laura Trump was speaking, and Michael Watley was the chairman of the North Carolina Party at that time,
Yes.
and got to go up, and it was all four of us in a room, and got to introduce, you know, got to be introduced to President Trump by Chairman Watley, and talk to him, talk to Laura, and we just had a great conversation dialogue backstage. Now, obviously, Chairman Watley is chairman of the entire Republican Party. Laura is his co-chair. I'm chairing the youth council, and Trump's the nominee. So all four of us were in a room, you know, 3 or 4 years ago. Had no idea where any of this would go, but that's where it first started. The relationship started, and since then, I've got to interact with President Trump numerous times. He's always eager to listen to young people and
Hmm.
actually ask me questions, which is so fascinating. And like he has the top of the top advisors around him, but he will, you know, never hesitate if we're together to ask a question or something like that, which is so cool.
You know, I that is such a great story because you know, you're Gen Z, and Gen Z is my wife and I have Gen Z sons. I have
Yeah.
a 19 and a soon to be 23.
Oh, awesome.
And I just thank the Lord every day they're working full time with Benny's, and they're off my insurance. And then I remember, now let me ask you something. What did you go to college, or,
Going
or
into my senior year of high school.
you did what?
Going into my senior year of high school.
Right now you're going into your senior year of high
Yes,
school.
sir. Correct.
Okay. All right. This is even more fascinating now. Um, I think about being a senior. So you're not okay. So anyway, I was gonna share this with you. I think your parents might be able to identify this. My oldest came to me and said, "Do I really have to go to college?" Because he graduated during the scamdemic, the big
Oh,
COVID thing, and
yeah. Bless his heart.
mask, and he couldn't go to his graduation and all this
Mm,
stuff. And he said, I don't know exactly what I want to do, and I don't want to waste your money and mom's money because we want to help him, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, yes, he's not going to college. This is great. Go work. This is great.
yeah.
I could do something with that money. Anyway, parents can identify with that. Young people that want Biden to pay off their student loans can't. You have been up close with uh, Donald Trump's personality
Yeah.
and his authenticity.
Yes.
How do you explain that to the 23-year-old fresh out of Temple University or University of South Carolina who is woke and driving an electric car that's now on fire? And you know the drill. How do you
Oh,
talk to
yes.
someone like that, a peer, or even a 19-year-old, and
Sure.
say, look, I think Trump is the way to go. I think conservatism is the way to go.
Yeah, so I think his authenticity always shines through, whether it's like on TV or behind the scenes. And I think that's why he's done so well on TikTok. Like right now, he has the fastest growing TikTok account because Biden has a TikTok as well. Nobody talks about it, but he gets on there and he's like, "Good morning, my fellow Americans." Pause. Next line. "Thank you for joining TikTok." Pause. Stand to the left. It's not, you know what I mean? Like he just
Yeah,
never,
yeah.
it's not authentic. And so my generation's like, oh, Trump just picked up the phone, filmed a selfie video while, hitting the driver on the golf course and keeps on going, and he gets hundreds of millions of views because again, regardless if you agree with him or not, you love his personality. Like nobody
Yeah.
doesn't love his personality. So that's going really, really well. And I think that again, just like you said, it's authenticity. I mean, he's up 8 points in the polls right now because people are realizing like, hey, this guy's legit. He's cognitively there, first of all. That's what we ask of
Yes.
our candidates
And
at this point.
that's important today,
Yes,
right?
it's so important. And you mentioned the scamdemic, and I would love to say a point on that. I absolutely think that COVID radicalized my generation to become conservative. I just mentioned that the New York Times this week had Trump up 8 points with the youth vote. A Republican presidential candidate hasn't won the youth vote since 2003. So that's major to be up by 8 points. And so we're having this conversation, post COVID. And I think, again, I was in middle school when COVID happened. I think COVID showed my generation how bad big government is. Big government at its worst was COVID, and we don't want that again. Big government told my generation that we couldn't graduate, that it was okay for the strip clubs to be open, but college, high school
Mm,
graduation, that was a no-no. We were evil, horrible human beings if we attempted to invite grandma over to Thanksgiving dinner. We had to strap a diaper to our face anytime we left the house. Not to mention, we were out of the classroom for a year to a year and a half.
yeah.
That was big government's doing. Why would we elect that again? So I absolutely think yes, it's a factor of Trump being such a great candidate with such a good positive message, Biden being such a horrible candidate with cognitive decline, and us seeing how bad big government is. That's why we're having a major pendulum shift to the right with the youth vote.
And that's the analysis I'm talking about, folks. He's a senior. He's a senior in high school. I'm a substitute teacher from time to time because you got to have a fallback position if your career is imploding. So I always have one. And I teach all ages, and I do coaching, and I teach public speaking and tutor
That's
people and
awesome.
whatever.
Yeah.
And again, it's just to find young people that want to openly engage
Yeah, it's difficult.
is a challenge, let
Yeah.
alone people that have prepackaged responses. Like you think about the list of words, and what you said was so on point with uh, the scamdemic and the lockdowns and the mandates and the fear and the manipulation of stats and numbers and the restrictions on the population. That just reeked of communist China and
Yeah, absolutely.
the Soviets and the Middle East. And it was a firsthand, and it was interesting because until it started to cut into young people's free time or enjoyment, it was kind of like,
Yes.
oh wow, this is kind of fun, but you can't go to the mall. What do you mean? You can't go to the concert. Whoa.
But Nancy Pelosi's getting her hair done. What are you talking
Exactly.
about? I can't go get my hair cut.
Exactly. And Dr. Fauci's at Yankee Stadium laughing,
Yes.
having
Sitting by
beers.
himself. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that was that. It's great that, and Trump has the ability, as you have, you need to leverage and use history as a mirror to
Yes. Big
reflect back
time.
on people, so they never can say, well, that never happened, or I don't know what you're talking about, because you're just holding a mirror up. And if you look at all the things they're saying that Donald Trump will do, I happen to think he's going to get 100 million votes. My concern is, and I want to get your thoughts on
You're the
this.
third person today to quote that number to me. The
Yeah,
third.
I thought he got close to 90 million in 2020. And full disclosure, I thought it was stolen in 2020. And my fear, as someone who's a few years older than you, is that they may attempt to do it again. And I also am going to make a prediction. And now, if this is wrong, don't quote me. But if I'm right, I'd like you to go back on Fox News and say, I was just talking to Ken Matthews, and he said Kamala Harris will be president by the end of July. I think she's president by the end of July.
I said 2 nights ago that I think that happens. I didn't say July, but I think that's very, very accurate. Because again, okay, let's take a second to talk about what's going on in that area. If they switch the top of the ticket and Kamala becomes the nominee,
Mm-hmm.
if you're saying yes, if you're saying Biden's too much in cognitive decline to be the nominee, then
Yep.
he's too much in cognitive decline to be the commander in chief. So if they do go down that route, they're going to have to put Kamala in. They're going to have to say, we did a neurological exam. Biden's stepping aside because he just learned of this health condition and just learned. He's going to have to step aside and he's going to retire in a private life. Kamala will be sworn in at 8 in the morning. They can't just put her on the top of the ticket and have Biden continue running the country. So nobody's talking about that, but that's a very
Mm-hmm.
good point. I completely agree.
And I also believe, if you've noticed, and I can tell already, you've probably seen that shift in going from the wise, dedicated family man, father, husband, Joe Biden, dedicating half a century to the country. Now it's like the poor man is sick. We have to move on. Everybody's gotten the script, even Jon Stewart and Jimmy Kimmel, they got the script.
They
Now
did.
they're all saying, they're all doing the jokes. They're all doing the jokes and the memes that we were doing 5 years ago. And I
Literally.
think this,
And we were called,
yeah,
rude humans for doing that. He has a stutter. How dare you make fun of him?
exactly. Exactly. And the interesting thing is, this is the escape hatch for Joe Biden. It gets him out of impeachment and it
Yes.
gets him out of jail. And that's what
Yes.
ticks me off about this, because everybody's now we're going to start the rallying around moment where the gutless rhinos will even say, well, he's not that well. Why even investigate him? Just let him drool off into the sunset, and 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 Kamala's in. Now, I've been putting a meme up that I made about the damage that President Kamala Harris could do in the first 24 hours. And I have a picture of Kiefer Sutherland, that I don't know if you remember the show
Oh
24,
yeah.
but it was a phenomenal show.
Yeah.
And that really scares the living hell out of me, because let's say she's sworn in at 8 o'clock, like you said. I mean, by noon, we could be back in the Middle East with aircraft and armor, and we could be living in the Ukraine. So it's a scary time.
It's absolutely a scary time. And I mean, I just look at Kamala and I'm like, how is that a better candidate than Biden? Like, how in the world? I mean, they really didn't set themselves up in a good position for this event to happen. I think, again, you look at Kamala, we were just talking about inauthenticity. You look at Kamala and you see reeking, she reeks of inauthenticity. But again, she's younger, she checks her boxes, the left loves that, and young people will be attracted to that. And that's when we have to get ahead of the messaging of attacking not just Biden, but saying Kamala has been there for every bad mistake that Biden's made. She's just as much as attacked to the economy that you're seeing. Instead of the Biden economy, it's the Biden Harris economy, because she was right there next to him, having a weekly lunch, being in every meeting. Apparently, is what we found out now, that she's been in every meeting with him all
Mhm.
this entire term. Why would we just let her get away scotch free and say that she can repair America when she didn't repair it? for 4 years, or at least save it for 4 years as vice president. She's not going to
And
get away with that.
she also did such a great job as the border czar.
Oh,
And
yes.
I understand. I was looking at the flight record. She went to the border one time, um, and that was pretty impressive.
Yeah, taking the time from her rhymes and riddles and her yellow school bus loving days, and her coconut tree poems to
Oh,
go
yeah.
to to go to the border. That was so kind and thoughtful of her. Kit, the border is so secure right now.
That's
We
right.
are so safe. Young Americans are not getting brutally murdered on college campuses by illegal immigrants. That's totally not happening. That is just right-wing propaganda. You are listening to the wrong sources if you're believing that. This has nothing to do with Kamala Harris. She's been the best border czar ever.
Now, I sense some sarcasm. I'm not sure though.
Just a little, just a
Okay.
little.
I would imagine you speak to a lot of groups. Is that correct? Are you
Yes,
doing a lot of
yes,
speaking?
yes,
What's
sir.
been the uh, most impressive audience? Well, I don't want to say impressive because then you're judging your audience, but what was the most challenging group to talk to?
I'll say
With
this.
yes.
I'm born and raised in Tuscaloosa. College football is my life. I love
Uh-oh.
the SEC. I have an
Nice.
Alabama Roll Tide helmet right there.
Nice.
I go to every football game imaginable. It's my thing. So I love speaking on SEC campuses, but you know that there's a major difference between an SEC crowd and going up north when it comes to politics. And
Yeah,
so
just ask
yes,
Riley.
exactly. Riley and I just did a speech together. So there's absolutely a big
Awesome.
heat. She knows that firsthand. And so, fortunately, I haven't seen the same attacks that she's been getting, but
Mhm.
I just introduced her at an event the other day where there was a security concern, and we had to kind of like, delay, coming out and that type of thing, which is again terrifying that she has to deal with that every day. But Riley's a good, strong person. And so, yes, speaking on SEC campuses, about supporting Trump, we expect, a packed room. Used to when you went up north or out west, you wouldn't necessarily have as large of crowds for
Mhm.
conservative campus speeches. And in the past year, we've seen a major, major difference in that. We have seen rooms be packed, which is so cool and so awesome. And I cannot tell you, Ken, the amount of times that I have had people come up to me and say, listen, I disagree with most things that you said in your speech. I'm a registered Democrat. Either I voted for Biden in 2020, or if they weren't old enough, their parents or grandparents voted for Biden in 2020. We cannot make that mistake again. And I'm like, that's fascinating. Like, tell me more. Like, what has changed your mind? And they're like, well, this is before the cognitive decline conversation. This is strictly just on the policies. This is
Mhm.
strictly just, looking at the state of the country. And they're like, we can't grow up like this. We can't raise a family like this. And I'm like, I completely agree. Like, bring your friends with you. This is great. Welcome to the party. And so it goes with conversations. There's a chapter in the book, it's my favorite chapter. It's called Hard Conversations and the Path Forward. And you know better than anybody that having conversations is how we heal America. If we sit down together, and I think Gen Z has a unique opportunity to do this, if we sit down across the table from somebody we disagree with and have a conversation, even if we leave the table still disagreeing, at least we talked. Because right now, Gen Z millennials are the generation that's out there screaming, crying, putting hashtags on Instagram, throwing their fists in the air, and that's all they do. There's no actual productive conversation for a path forward, and we expect America to be better without actually doing any work to make America better. So I think that it starts with conversations, and campus speeches are the perfect way to do that because we've seen droves of people coming out to them in areas where typically we wouldn't see conservative audiences.
Well, this is why you're energizing as a guest because of the youth,
Yeah.
and I only say that in the best way, you're right in that sweet spot where, someone shows up and they're even 35, the
Sure.
20-year-old's like, oh, here we go. And it's a shame because I know you were not raised like that. And I
No.
wasn't raised like that either. I mean, I look back at I was raised again, it's ironic you said dad in construction and mom teacher. I mean, my mom was teaching substitute teaching until she was 83. She's now 85.
That's
And
awesome.
I'm gonna catch hell for saying that because she hates when I say that. And my dad was in construction, painting contractor, and I grew up in construction. Neither one of my parents went to college. They both owned small businesses. And I was raised to respect the police and the military. I was even raised, foolishly, to respect the media.
Hmm. Here we are now.
And after 40 years in it, I don't. What's your take after experiencing a little bit of it?
So I first got started in politics by founding the Truth Gazette, a alternative to the fake news mainstream media. Because like I said, I told you I started watching the news because I was interested in kind of the dynamic of American politics. And I
Hmm.
was like, I'm flipping through channels, and every single channel is telling me a completely different side of the same story. What is happening? How am I supposed to be able to tell the truth? And so I'm here because I was frustrated with mainstream media. And absolutely, I want to say one thing. I know you talked about how you were raised and the morals and values that surrounded you, that made you, who you are, and the kind of the inspiration. I shared my parents earlier, but absolutely, I know we said mentioned this at the beginning, but I have to give so much credit to Rush Limbaugh for
Oh,
being
yes.
like a mentor. I don't know the guy at all, but listening to him growing up, this is before I was even interested in politics at all. Every summer, my family and I had a place we went down south, and we would drive down there at the beginning of the summer, and it would be the entire 4 to 6 drive down there. I would have, Dad would have the Rush Limbaugh show playing. He would have like a catch up from the entire week listening to it. So I grew up as a Rush baby. I'm absolutely a Rush baby. Didn't know what politics was, but from, age 0 to 16, sat and listened to him almost every single day, and that's how I got to know you. But absolutely was raised on those morals and values that he shared so eloquently on the radios every single day.
Yeah.
So people being grown up around that is absolutely how this type of stuff happens. You're like, how did your mind mold this way? It was Rush Limbaugh, absolutely, that made all this happen. I have to give
I
him all
was
the credit.
just I completely, and this was my fault because you just turned 18 and we lost Rush. It's hard to believe a couple years ago.
Mhm.
Um, I totally forgot that your uh exposure to common sense and, as Rush would say, making the complicated, more easy and
Yeah.
understandable.
Yes.
And I remember because Rush would always talk, and he was a very gracious man in person. And one of the most frustrating things for those of us that were his guest hosts, and I only did it for 4 years. I mean, there were people like um, Mark Stein that did it for 15 years, and Bo Snerdley I mean, Rush was such a mentor for Bo, who just got syndicated out of New York.
That's
But Bo was
awesome.
with him for
That's really
30
great.
plus years. And people give conservatives unfairly such a bad, that's the most frustrating thing I can be on. A lot of people just, they blow it off, and I get it, but it just bothers me that uh, conservatism is just packaged and labeled because the majority of media, 90% plus, are openly Democrat and they support
Yes.
leftist causes. So before someone like yourself or anybody, any of us in the conservative realm get a fair shot, we have to deflect all the, well, you must be a
Mhm.
racist. You must be a
Mhm.
crusty old white guy. You must be a
Mhm.
misogynist. We have to beat all that away before we even can get to how great conservative Christian principles are. And I think
Exactly.
and I think that's why, probably one of the reasons you're so well spoken, because you never, in other words, when you go on if you're a liberal and you go on a liberal show, you don't even have to think.
No, no, you don't.
It's
They
just
do
like in
all
a
the work
college
for you.
classroom. It's like agreeing with your professor, right? But if
Yes.
you're a conservative, you know, if you get in the wrong lane, okay, I'm going to have to defend this. So I need to know my stuff. And that was Rush. Plus, Rush was funny. And as a fellow football fan, you probably loved Rush because I never met anybody that was in talk radio and his side of it. And he was so savvy with sports, with
He
golf.
knew
And
politics, he knew
yeah,
sports, he knew
yeah.
music. I mean, he knew it all, and nobody talks about that. And so, like, he was the intellect. I will never, ever forget where I was when got the notification that he had passed and was like, where do we go from here? Like,
Yeah, it was.
what in the world? Like, how do we make it through this election? What do we do post? Like, what is conservatism anymore? Like, who is the person that's going to be like that central voice that, like, regardless of how chaotic everything is, like, you can tune in and listen to how he's going to calm me down and say, hey, do not panic, which is what he always was like. Do not give up on America. There's still hope. Who is that person? And yeah, I love, all the radio hosts out there. Nobody can ever fill his shoes though.
Oh, that's 1,000% true.
Yeah.
Because for a variety of reasons, a lot of people, and you may know this, but he was a top 40 DJ.
Yeah.
out of the Pittsburgh area. And then he was playing the hits. And he was, I mean, I love listening to some of his old uh, music tapes. He was a goofball. He just loved having fun. He loved
It
radio.
did. It was
And
fun. That like
yeah,
that's what was so different. Like I'm not well, I am. I will attack mainstream media because it's not fun. You tune in and you're like, okay, this is the same 10 stories they covered in the last hour, just with different guests and maybe an updated graphic. Like, what's fun about that? But
yeah.
Rush was like fascinating, like so much fun.
Well, just like you look at the parody songs and stuff that I had an opportunity to meet Paul Shanklin, who wrote
Oh
so many of
wow.
those
That's so
parody
cool.
songs. And
Yeah.
working with the Limbaugh staff was mind-boggling because most of his staff was with him for a quarter century.
Mm,
So you walked in, you fill in for him, you go in with your A game, but you're
yeah.
working with all the people that you came to know and love as a listener. I started listening to him in 89, 90, and I was doing top 40 radio. I'd get off the air from doing a morning top 40 show, which was crazy and zany, and it was Ken Matthews and the B Morning Crew and woo. And I'd go to my car and eat my Subway sandwich and listen to Rush.
Yeah.
And then everything just kind of evolved. And when you realize what you just said, he was on over 600 stations. He was a voice of reason. And sadly, I think mainstream corporate media infrastructure is kind of relieved he's not around to expose what he used to expose. And that's why
Yes.
I think there's major topics, and you certainly don't have to elaborate on them. I'm just saying there's major topics that are just off, they're off limits for people that just 4 or 5 years ago, like myself, were talking about, Pfizer, the border, stolen elections, child trafficking, Epstein.
Yeah.
Where's the Israel money going? You're not allowed to talk about that now.
Mm-mm.
And that is what's so terrifying. Somebody asked me the other day about Rush, and I said, I am just glad he's in a better place and he doesn't have to deal with this now. It's bad enough he fought cancer and helped get
Yeah.
Trump elected till the bitter end.
Yes.
Um, Sorry, you got us off. You got me off on a little Rush
No, no,
tangent, but
no.
what you
No.
said was it's so refreshing to hear it from young people
Yeah.
because Rush resonated. He was a communicator.
He was.
He
He
wasn't
absolutely
he
was.
wasn't just I'm going to talk to this person or that person. So let's talk a little bit about your ideologies,
Sure.
where they started, and if you're strapped for time, I mean, if you've got to get to your private jet and get to that island, and
We might have 5 to 10 more,
okay,
and
that's
I'll have a
perfect.
radio.
Got it. Let's do it. So, ideologically, at what age did you start forming political opinions? And did your parents always take you to church? What was the discipline regime like in your house?
Yeah, so I joked in the book that I had a drug problem growing up. I was drugged to church every Wednesday night and Sunday morning. So that's kind of my upbringing, and that's not complaining. But that's just as a kid, that's you're like, well, I'm here all the time. Like my second home is the church.
That
But
line
I'm
is great.
so
Oh my God, that is such an Alabama line.
but it's I'm so fortunate now, like looking at it from this perspective as like an actual, like mature Christian myself, like it's my personal faith now, not my parents. That I'm like this, like I would not be who I am if I wasn't, growing up in the church. And I remember, and you're gonna get me on a tangent now, but I remember during the summer of 2020, I
Mhm.
was so upset with just the way the country was, how crazy it was, how divisive it was, just everything going on that summer. I remember saying something one day in Sunday school, and I was like, I just can't believe, like, we thought that was low and picture how low America's gotten since then. But we were like, I just can't believe how, sad of a state America is in, like how these crazy people in the street, like this is so sad. And my Sunday school teacher was like, what you're looking at are lost people. Those are people that do not know about, God's hope and grace and goodness. Like these people have no idea. And so that really flipped a switch for me. And I mentioned that story in the book of like, we have to get that message out. And so the message that I finished every speech with is, I know a lot of people out there do not have hope, specifically my peers that do not have hope in America. They don't have hope in our future. They don't have hope in restoring freedom. But I want to reassure you that I do. And somebody's always like, how in the world do you have hope? Like you see it more than anybody. You see how crazy it is. How do you have hope? And I always say, my hope is in Jesus Christ alone, not in any DC bureaucrats. And I think that if we all adopt that message, that mantra
Mhm.
of like, my life, my happiness, my future doesn't need to depend on whatever is happening at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue or in the halls of the Capitol, but is what happening up there and in our heart with Him. That's what's important, and that's what really our main message needs to be. And I think we're moving towards that, which is so inspiring because we're seeing those revivals break out all across the country, and I've
Yes.
gotten to be at a few, and it's really, really, really cool to see young people like always searching for something and finally finding the one thing that can fill them forever for
Beautiful,
eternity.
beautiful message to wrap up on. Can you hold your book up? I see it's behind you on the
Absolutely.
shelf.
I
Or
have
there
one
it is.
here.
Yeah.
Yes, right
Yeah.
there.
And like I said, mine's on the way from Amazon,
Well, thank
and
you.
I
We
can't wait.
somehow made #2 on Amazon, which has blown my mind that the American dream is so alive and well that an 18-year-old can publish a book
Yep.
and be in the #2 bestseller on Amazon. The people that out there are saying the American dream's dead and buried, that
Oh,
have
no, it isn't.
completely been proven false this week. Because the
Yep.
fact that that happened is, I literally blew my mind. I woke up that day and didn't think that would ever happen. So that shows
People,
that there are strong Christian conservatives out there that agree with us.
people are hungry for this message. And
Yes.
I mean, God bless you for mentioning a relationship with Jesus Christ,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
when you look at all the different relationships that we try to maintain throughout our life
Yeah.
with work and all the other stuff, that's really the most valuable,
Yes. And
spiritually. And
relationships, the key word, what you said, I say there's a chapter of the book about faith, and I say, Christianity is not a religion, it's a relationship with God. And when you realize that, it becomes personal and it becomes powerful. And so that's what we've got to get out to everybody super fast.
awesome. Well, can you do me one favor before you go? And I
Yeah,
know
of
this is
course.
this is so this is so, you know, but the next time you see Riley,
Yes.
drop my name because I want to get her on the show.
I'll send her a text right now.
I call her America's Aqua Woman, the real
Yeah,
Aqua Woman.
she is.
And
I will definitely be texting her. We just talked yesterday, so I
because
will
I
be
I I
emailing
want to
her.
get more people like yourself with this great message. I wish you the best of luck. I hope you're going to
Thank
come
you.
back on. I mean, you certainly
Absolutely.
have probably another, what, I'm thinking another 80 plus years in your career. So certainly you would include me in that while I'm alive.
Of
Uh,
course. Anytime. Reach out. I would love to.
we'll have a wonderful weekend. Thank you, Brilyn Hollyhand, and we'll talk
Absolutely.
soon.
I appreciate you, Ken. This was a lot of fun.